You're listening to Airey Bros Radio. Be there or be square, because it's all killer, no filler.
Basically, tell me the food you eat. I can tell you what road you're on. Are you on a road to health? Are you on a road to diabetes? Eat more fruit and good things will happen. The 80-10-10 book, which is available in Audible, it's available in hard copy. You can go to Amazon and get it. The simplest answer is the really watery fruits, the really juicy stuff, tends to go with other really juicy stuff. You know, you're under a peach tree, you're going to be eating peaches. You're not going to be looking for something else. The basic course allows you to coach people in the rudiments of 80-10-10 as described in the book. The default state for all life on Earth is health. Just give information and trust. It took a lot of education to overcome my education. This is Dr. Douglas Graham, and you are listening to Airey Brothers Radio.
So, Dr. Grimm, I am very excited to have this conversation with you today. I stumbled upon your work probably about 10 years ago, and I would say it probably took me 10 years to comprehend like a small amount of it and start to understand and practice it. And so I'm very excited to have this conversation. But you mentioned you're in Serbia teaching a fasting class, so let's get into that to start off. What does that consist of, and what are you teaching the students over there?
Fasting is the deepest form of rest known to man. It's deeper than anything we do during our normal life because we take into consideration all four forms of rest at the same time. So, as you likely know, when you go to bed at night and you're tired and you can't do any more, you rest for 6, 8, 10 hours, however long you get, and you wake up in the morning ready to go again. It's pretty much a miracle. Where did that come from? You go to bed with a headache, you wake up without it. A tremendous number of symptoms disappear overnight. The body heals itself when it is in deep rest. This is nature's plan. Were you to hurt yourself running down a mountainside or something, you just wait, if you break some legs or something. So anyway, fasting is a normal, natural part of our life, to the point where the first meal of the day, called breakfast, is almost called breakfast in every part of the world. And we get into, obviously, physical rest. People rest physically as much as possible. This is not a workout time. This is a rest time. Like you wouldn't wake up in the middle of the night and do push-ups. You're trying to get as much rest as you can in as short a period of time as possible. But we also have sensory rest, meaning that it's comfortable temperature, it's comfortable humidity, we're surrounded by nature, there's beautiful views all around us. It's comfortable. How else could you say it? This is sensory rest. We hear the sounds of nature. We look out the window and you see greenery everywhere and flowers. There's no cityscape of any kind. All of these things affect our psyche and allow you to get deeper into a restful state, as does emotional rest. When I was learning to become a EMT, the first thing they taught us, and they taught us repeatedly, was when you're the first responder at an accident, you need to introduce yourself and say, "I'm here to help you." And this will very often make the difference between life and death with somebody if they know that they're there to be helped. So in fasting, we want this emotional rest, just like you get in a hospital where a doctor might say, "Oh, don't worry about a thing, it's all going to be all right." And the nurse comes in and says, "Do you have everything you need? Can I do anything for you? We're going to take care of everything." So in a setting of a fast, we want people to feel that things are being taken care of for them. They're into deep emotional rest. They don't have to worry about anything. They don't have a lot, if anything, on their agenda except to learn what they can. And they then get into the fourth type of rest, which is called physiologic rest. And physiologic rest happens after the digestive system shuts down. So it doesn't happen overnight. It doesn't happen in 5, 10, 15 hours of not eating. It typically takes 3 to 10 days for the digestive system to completely shut down, depending on your health and vitality and current status. And it can take longer than that, but it's typically a matter of about a week to completely shut down, at which point, because the digestive system uses about 30% of the calories that you eat each day, we're reducing the effort demand dramatically. Heart rate goes down, respiratory rate goes down, temperature goes down, body gets into a much deeper resting state. And while we're resting, something almost magical happens in this deep resting state, which is that all structures and all functions vector towards health, which is pretty darn amazing. Right? So it's amazing enough to be worth saying twice. All structures, all functions vector towards health when we fast, but fasting is really way misunderstood by most people. It's something that does require proper supervision, proper guidance. If you're going to go home and do exactly what you did that got you in the position where you needed to fast in the first place, you really haven't gained anything except a little time. But if you can learn enough during a fast to go home a different person with new preferences and old habits broken and a whole new program, if you will, a regimen for healthful living, then you can go home and live the life of your dreams and experience the highest health possible. Athletes use coaches, mountain climbers use guides, businessmen use consultants. You wouldn't jump in an airplane and say, okay, I'm going to learn how to fly this baby. The same thing with fasting. This is something that does require appropriate supervision. There are many supervisors of fasts around the world. I've been doing it for a little more than 40 years now, so I've seen some amazing miracles.
With your 40 years experience, what does your current, fasting protocol look like these days?
Well, it changes as the time goes by, but this group of people, first of all, nowadays I take people in groups rather than individually. So I'm not running a hotel where everybody comes in and out at a different time. This is a group, so they get the advantage of group dynamics. They get the bonding, they get the mutual support, they get more information from me because I can tell everybody at once and then still handle individual questions. But I can give one lecture rather than having to give 6 or 8 to as many people. And the protocol is basically get into the deepest rest humanly possible, which takes most people a few days to settle down and get into deep rest. At that point, they're on a water diet for as long as necessary to overcome their specific health problems, as short as possible, because we're not looking to make it any longer than need be. Most people here will be on water for 2 to 3 weeks, I would think, this time around.
You brought up the different levels of fasting and how in society today we say 15 hours. Oh, I fasted for 15 hours. But that's not really a fast, right? That's like a time.
No, the body takes like some 48 to 72 hours most of the time to go through the physiologic changes that occur in order to get into a fast. Some of these changes include emptying the digestive tract so that you're no longer uptaking nutrients. This alone can take 24 hours or more. I've seen it take 48 and more. It includes switching from a carbohydrate-based metabolism, because normally that's where we are. All the cells of the body are fueled by carbohydrate. we switch from a carbohydrate-based metabolism momentarily, for a short period of a few hours, we switch to a protein-based metabolism, because the protein is so easy to access. But there's not a lot of it. We don't store protein. The body has no capacity to store any caloronutrient except for fat. So very quickly, that little bit of 10, 20 grams of available protein is utilized. And then as soon as we start using protein as fuel, the body has to convert that protein into sugar, into glucose, because there are many cells of the body that only use glucose. Where all the cells of the body use glucose, some only use glucose. So the body has to keep making glucose. At that point, once again, the body switches metabolism and starts converting fat into glucose, which is something it always does. It does that every minute of every day. It's always converting fat into glucose, but normally it's doing so in the presence of the carbohydrates we eat. When we do it without consuming carbohydrates, so we have no carbohydrates available, again, the body doesn't store carbohydrates. When we start converting fat into carbohydrate in the absence of carbohydrate, an abnormal condition develops. Abnormal conditions are called osis. Any abnormal condition in the body ends in osis. And the abnormal condition that happens in this case is one where ketones are formed, and we end up with what is called ketosis. Ketones affect the brain adversely in a variety of ways, most of which are quite similar to having one or two alcoholic beverages. They don't help in a lot of ways. So it's a condition that you can be in for short periods of time. The body is set up for such things. It's set up for, if you're in the wilderness for a week and you can't find food, you're going to be okay because you have enough stored fat on you to make it through. But it is still it's considered medically an abnormal condition, ketosis. So it's not something you want to strive for. You want to stay in a carbohydrate-based metabolism whenever possible. Does that help?
That helps. And based off of that, you said you've been doing this for 40 years, right? And
I've been supervising fast for that long, yeah.
For 40 years. And so my point being is it takes a lot of time to kind of get to those 3 days, to that week, to those extra long fasts. Is there benefits to those time-restricted feeds in your daily life? Or should you only be doing protocols like this when you're doing like a longer time trying to do those water fasts?
Well, I'm a huge fan of eating meals that are satisfying. As you know, when you were little, your mom reminded you, I'm sure, many, many times, don't eat sweets before the meal, it'll spoil your appetite. Pretty much everybody's heard that. And what mom meant was, don't eat sweets before the meal, it'll spoil your appetite for what I'm making. But I'm a huge fan of eating meals that are satisfying. The problem with standard Western diet is that the meals aren't satisfying, and everybody knows it, which is why we have dessert at the end, because the sweets, like your mom said, will satiate you. Which is the goal of eating, is to satiate. So if your meals are satiating and satisfying, then you obviate the need or the desire to eat in between meals. So if I eat 2 meals a day or even 3 that are fully satiating, then I'm not thinking about food until the next time I sit down to eat, which essentially is what other people call intermittent fasting, but they're actually not fasting. They're just intermittently not eating, or they're intermittently eating, but they're not resting. It's the wrong term to use, really, and it's okay, I don't mind, but it's just the wrong term. Fasting is a deep state of rest. When you said earlier, the 4 stages or the 4 states of fasting, those are 4 states of resting, 4 types of rest. And you are only get into what we would consider fasting when you're participating in all 4 of those. Certainly, if you're out running and you start walking, you're definitely taking physical rest relative to the running. Or if you lay down compared to sitting down, it's more restful. But that's not fasting. That's just a little bit deeper rest than what you were doing. Getting into physical, physiological, sensory, and the emotional rest. These are all parts of allowing the body's processes to put the emphasis on healing and recovering from whatever's going on, because what's called the default, the automatic state, the fallback, if you will, the default state for all life on Earth is health. That's the natural. When we have ill health or unhealth, if we have symptoms, this is a way the body is letting us know that we're not getting what we need. And if we supply what we need and don't supply that which we don't need, the automatic outcome is health. We know this. You could have a house plant, and if it's drooping, you add a little water, and if it's getting leggy, you give it a little more light. You don't treat it. You don't stimulate it, irritate it, or pulverize it, or anything else. All you do is give it what it needs, and health is restored to the plant. That might be, I would say that's not an oversimplification for humans. It's not. And all we have to do is give us what we need, and health happens automatically.
With this protocol that you're presenting and working people through, how often are you recommending that people do this on a yearly basis, or is it more frequently than once or twice a year?
Oh no, it's nowhere near that frequent. It might be. Okay, first of all, the goal is to live in such a way that fasting is never required. This is a time out. Okay, this is a time out. This is, wow, I've been doing things not the way they should have been, and I've not been feeling like myself for a long time. I've developed symptoms that I can't seem to overcome through just changing my diet or changing my sleeping pattern or things that you might automatically try. Or it's progressed to the point where the doctors have said, there's nothing else we can do for you. Or sometimes they say nothing else can be done because they don't want to recognize that there might be competition. And so typically people motivated to go through a fast have some health problems that they really want to overcome. But equally so, people motivated to fast are high-level athletes who want to get to the next level and raise their performance by improving their digestion, improving their absorption, improving their elimination, improving their muscle integrity, improving so many factors about their mental, physical coordination, improving their balance and agility and all the things that come with improved mental function, recall and visual memory, and on through the things that make for good athletes. So all of this, because as I said, all structures, all functions vector towards health. If you're a performer of any kind and you want to improve performance, fasting is definitely to be included. But it might be one fast in a lifetime.
Okay. Well, there's the hook. High-level athlete. You got me right there, because I fancy myself as somewhat of a high-level runner.
I fasted a lot of high-level runners. In fact, I was telling a story earlier today about a friend of mine who is an ultra runner. He ran a run every year. He ran the same run. And he got to a point where he knew it pretty well, and he cut his time down from 28 hours to 26 to 24, to about 23 and a half hours. Then he came and fasted. And he went home and trained. And the next time, because it's an annual run, the next time the run was run, he ran it in 16 hours. That's a substantial change.
Yeah.
That's a substantial improvement, right? To cut a third off your time. Now, granted, it's an ultra, so there was room for that, but that was notable. And I've seen that time and time and time again with athletes that fast. They just bring their performance level to almost unthinkable for themselves, like quantum leap. Wow, I didn't know I could get that good that fast. It's kind of fun. I mean, I did it myself. I was absolutely, I fasted in 1985, for instance, and I was a professional athlete, and the change was nothing short of profound, and it was enough to make me want to continue and be supervising ever since. And well, actually, I was supervising before, but that one, someone supervised me.
And is the improvement, is that just because you're resetting and your body then becomes better at absorbing the nutrients that you need, or is there more to it where you're helping the muscle function?
Well, obviously you still have your own muscles, so it's not like you've been rebuilt.
Sure.
But every structure and every function, just like a night's sleep, in the morning your coordination is better than when you're tired. Your visual functions are better than when you're tired. You're sharper. It's not just physical coordination or memory or recall or the ability to bring up things. You ever have stuff stuck on the tip of your tongue? And so many functions. But anytime you can give the brain does all its resorting when you're at sleep and when you're in deep rest. And so to take an adult-sized portion of rest and actually allow yourself to have enough time to get healthy again just makes for some dramatic changes. But there's no structures that aren't improved. It's something I've never seen a downside to. When we start to realize that almost every mammal on Earth fasts as part of their natural annual cycle, including what nature provides for us. I mean, normally, if you were trying to live out in the woods, whether you were in the tropics or in the temperate zone, you'd find that there's a time of year where there's not much food. It's a slightly different time of year in the tropics, but there's still a time where there just isn't much food available. And certainly in more temperate zones, you'd run out in February or March from whatever you stored from last autumn, and things get lean. And those lean times were very common. People used to think that was an automatic thing to maybe go through the month of February and really not have any food. You're just waiting for the first rhubarb, you're waiting for the first radish, you're waiting for the first berries, you're waiting for spring to show itself so there's something to eat.
Dr. Graham, there's a lot of things that you're bringing up that I want to talk on, but I don't want to miss anything, and I definitely want to speak on the coaching, sir. And you starting fasting in 1985, but you just mentioned in the winter in February that you might not want to eat as much because there's not as many available fruits and vegetables around you that are in season. How do you suggest people go about that when they're trying to have this protocol, the 80-10-10, eat the right foods, but there's stuff that's not in season? Do you suggest?
Okay, so first of all, what I actually said is that's how it would be in nature. We long ago left that domain, right? We're wearing clothing, we're using bedding, we're heating our homes. We've taken the tropics with us wherever we go. We put ourselves in a tropical environment we got smart enough to be able to do that, or dumb enough, I don't know which. And at this point, the world is your playground. So if you're in Europe, you can get food from South Africa that's having the height of summer all through the European winter You can get food from South America if you're in North America, and it's and you can get peaches in February, you know, because it's peach season in Chile or something. So is this a problem? In some ways, yes, and in some ways, no. Obviously, the transport of food. Um, if you go to Greenland, where it's really cold, they built glass houses. It's really cold, but they got a lot of sun. Like the sun almost never sets in the summertime. So they have tremendous amounts of light, and then they have geothermal, and they grow crops. They grow tropical crop. Let me say that in English. They grow tropical crops in Greenland. I know somebody that sold them the banana plants for the banana crop that's grown in Greenland using geothermal for heat, and then just this unlimited summer sun. It's all just done under glass. So we have the capacity to make food available. I mean, I buy food all year round from pretty much one supplier, but he gets me fantastic food all year round. It's not, okay, it's different in summer than it is in winter, for sure, but it's still fantastic food all year round. It's not like you can't get citrus, pineapple, bananas, apples, pears all winter long. Persimmon, pomegranate, I mean, grapes, there's a lot available all winter long. So it's not like we're just like starving. It's not, winter is nowhere near as harsh. And when you learn the tricks for shortening winter a little bit, or the winter experience a little bit, as I say, pomegranate and persimmon dominate in December and January. Maybe you take one of your holidays for 2 weeks in February and go someplace warm. And by the time you get back, it's almost spring. You know, so you can shorten the winter in a lot of ways. You could make peace with the idea of eating a lot of bananas for the course of the winter and say, you know what, I'm going to take a week or two and just eat bananas, and wow, after that, everything else will just seem like such a luxury. And winter will be over.
Thank you for that perspective. That kind of helps me wrap my head around certain things. And we live in Colorado, or I live in Colorado. We lived in Leadville, Colorado, and during mud season, all the locals, they get out of Leadville. You don't want to be there for those 2 weeks. You want to be there when it's all muddy. You want to get out of town. So I appreciate that perspective. Now, speaking of all the endurance athletes you've coached and helped troubleshoot their athletic performance, what are some of the things that people who, you know, they see the 80-10-10 coaching protocol that just rolled out, what can they look for in that certification to kind of, you know, engage them in that course and want them to sign up for that?
Well, the course, it's an interesting question because we're really making the course about coaching. That's what it's about. People who would like to help others, people who have the motivation or the, you know, their passion. They love helping others. I mean, this is a normal, natural thing in people, right? Like infants and babies love to help. And so it's a normal, natural thing to want to help, to want to be a force for good in the world, to want to be kind, and we hate watching others suffer. It's one of the things we do worst of all is we're really not good at watching others suffer. It's hard on us. And so for people who wanted to turn that innate desire to help and share with others when you find something good, and at the same time make a living at it perhaps, or at least an income at it, we started this coaching program because I mean, as much as I intend to live forever and so far so good, everything's going just fine, probably it's not going to work out. And there's going to be a void when I'm done. And I'm hoping that by the time I'm done, there'll be at least hundreds, if not thousands, of other 80-10-10 coaches. So we've created a coaching program that is unlike any other. It's a certification program which will certify you to coach at various levels. There's different scope of practice, what you're allowed to coach or what you're certified to coach. There's specialty coaching that happens in the higher levels of the course, but the basic course allows you to coach people in the rudiments of 80-10-10 as described in the book, how to troubleshoot, how to help them if they're having problems. And oddly, perhaps unexpected, a lot of the people taking the course also wanted to use the course and learning all of those little tweaks that are possible to help them with their own program. So they got better and are in the process of getting better. So there's 3 parts to the course. Because I already wrote the book, if people want to just follow the book, they can. So what I did is I created a course. My section was 6 hours long, and I'm teaching people all the stuff that's not in the book, but it's about the book. 10% made it into the book. 90% is on the cutting room floor. So that's pretty normal. And the things that I found out since writing the book, since it's 20 years ago that the book was written, and I've learned a lot since. So I'm showing people deeper reasons and more of them, and other things that would A, make eating cooked food less desirable, and B, make eating fruits and vegetables more desirable, so that they can use some of those things with their clients. My wife, Rosalind, is an educator by trade. She was senior course director for teacher training for the YMCA in the entire Great Britain. And so as that, she got very good at creating coursework and teacher training. And she created most of the testing and is teaching her section another 4 hours of how to learn, how to teach, how to tell if your students are learning what you're trying to teach, all the different things that go into making a teacher a better teacher. And then the way this whole thing started was I got a call from Ted Carr, a long-term friend of mine, who is basically a business coach. And he loves teaching people how to become financially successful in the vegan movement. And he called me up. He said, I got a problem. I said, what is it? He said, people are coming to me wanting to learn to be 80-10-10 coaches. They want to learn how to coach. They want to learn, what do they tell others? They want some kind of certification. And he goes, I really can't do it. And you wrote the book. So I said, Ted, I know how to create that, but I don't know how to get the word out. I'm not a tech wizard by any stretch. You create courses for a living. If you'll help me create the course and teach a section of it, then I'll do it. If you'll show people how to find an endless stream of clients, if you'll show people how to keep renewing your business, if you'll show people how to make yourself expanding the business while you're asleep, essentially, by using the power of good internet and cover the business side. So he created a segment of the course, and he's teaching that actually tomorrow. Then the next day we'll do questions and answers. We recorded the entire thing, so that will all be available as a recorded thing for anybody who in future wants to take the course. And we will continue doing live Q&As with students, so we'll develop a bigger and bigger library of live Q&A for people. That's the course, so they get certified to help others become either start or become better at 80-10-10 in order to improve their health in whatever way it applies.
And with the coursework and the people that are taking it, what's the demographic look like? Are we talking a mix of people coming from the nutrition world? Is it holistic health? Do we have sports performance people? Is it a hodgepodge?
I would have to say hodgepodge. I'm seeing, I've had several people who are teachers who say they want to learn how to coach better, and they're sure that it will make them better teachers. I've had there are several athletes, there are several people who run large festivals, and they want to be able to offer their services at the festivals to their own clientele. You know, they already have the clientele. There's plenty of people there who are there because, as I say, they want to get their own health so right that they know that they can help others with theirs because they did it. And so they're there to really fine tune and ask all. There are definitely some people there who just want to ask a lot of questions, and that's fine for me. I'm perfectly happy. I like answering questions. So, but it's been a pretty good mix of young and old. There's people in their 20s right on up through 60s, and it's for anybody who's got a passion for health.
When it comes to 80-10-10, and you brought up people who are trying to get off of eating cooked food, what do you think if someone who hears this podcast and they're intrigued but they don't even know where to start? Where are some places to start, and where are some things to look for as they're starting that might be roadblocks?
Well, there's more free information on my website than anywhere else on the web about eating raw food. So they can go to my website and find free information that just goes on and on and on and on. They can go to my YouTube channel, and there's several thousand YouTube videos that I've done over the years, educational videos. None of them are marketing. I'm not the marketing guy. I don't put a marketing message at the end of every talk. I just don't do it. I just give information and trust. I run a forum that's on my website, and you can register for the forum, and it's a free service. I have the largest Q&A on the web about raw food on my website. So if they start there, it's a pretty good start just to get their feet wet. Certainly the 80-10-10 book, which is available in Audible, it's available in hard copy. You can go to Amazon and get it. You don't have to get involved with me if you don't want to. And that's certainly an inexpensive way to get your feet wet, but you have to buy a book.
When it comes to what fruits to eat, what not to eat, is there fruits that maybe might be easier for people to eat? Maybe fruits that, hey, you need to eat this by itself and don't combine it with other things, just like stuff like that, simple things that, maybe if someone eats grapes with something else, they might not feel good and they might not be able to figure that out.
That's an interesting question. The simplest answer is the really watery fruits, the really juicy stuff, tends to go with other really juicy stuff. So if I'm eating something dry like a banana or dry like a date, those things would go better with themselves than if I'm going to take watermelon and dates and put them together. That's not likely to sit as well. We have to understand that we're living in a world that isn't quite as healthy as we'd like it to be, or as you guys might be. Where the number one over-the-counter remedy is for digestive disorders, where the number one prescription drug is for digestive disorders, where the number one surgery is for digestive system problems. People are not doing well in this regard, and so a lot of people have to be very careful when they eat, especially when they eat fruits and vegetables, which, yes, do digest with far less effort, far more ease than many other foods, especially the richer ones, but they're also not inert, right? They're biochemically active, and so when you mix things together, you can get results, whereas when you mix two things that are inert together, you're not really going to get much. So things that have a super long shelf life tend to be inert.
Thank you for simplifying that for me. That really helped.
I guess the question I have, because I've been experimenting, I tend to eat a little bit more seasonally, depending on what's available. And so now with summer being here, I've been devouring melons left and right,
Sure.
and
I'm
doing
going
it
through peaches like there's no tomorrow.
and doing it very monostructurally, where I'll just I'll eat a whole watermelon, or
Good for you.
I'll eat a cantaloupe, and so when I tell some people that I'm doing this, the question I get is, "Oh, well, what does that do to your blood sugar?" And so rather
Nothing.
than me, yeah, I mean that's kind of what my response is. I'm like, it's not like if I eat a pint of ice cream and I go into a diabetic coma and want to take a nap, I don't get
That's
that.
another thing.
I don't get that when I eat an entire cantaloupe for a meal. So I'm just curious.
So the way this works is a little bit different than your car, but not a lot different than your car. If your gas tank is full, you can't put much gas in the car. But if your gas tank is empty, you can fill her up. So if you're an active guy like you are, and you've used your muscles and you've realized that they have what's called a functional level of glycogen, that's good for some, depending on your fitness, somewhere between 1,200 and 1,600 calories. You have, by going out for some exercise, created a demand for a fair number of calories, depending on what you just did. Could be 6, 8, 1,000, if I can get away with saying 1,000. And oddly, in your blood itself, there's glucose. There's a technical name for it. It's called blood glucose. And you measure your blood glucose if you're a diabetic, but the rest of us just call it blood sugar. And you got roughly 5 quarts of blood. And in those 5 quarts of blood, you've got 5 grams of sugar. At 28 grams per ounce, we're talking about 1/5 of 1 ounce of sugar in your entire bloodstream. 5 grams. But a banana could have 20 grams of glucose. So you sit down and eat 10 bananas and you just took in 200 grams and throw it into your bloodstream that only has 5 grams to begin with, or the same with a melon. And you go, what the heck? Your blood sugar would go up like to 100,000 or something. But it doesn't, because the sugar goes directly into your bloodstream and back out and directly into your muscles where it belongs, because there's demand. If you had just filled your muscles with food and then you just had another meal right on top of that, well, now there's nowhere for the glucose to go. Now you got a little problem. You can eat until you fall asleep at Thanksgiving or Christmas or those kinds of meals, right? You can overload your system. You don't even really go to sleep. You go comatose. You wake up from the coma and eventually then you go to bed. So in a healthy individual, really nothing happens at all. You get a little rise in blood sugar. Within an hour or so, it starts coming back down, and within 2 hours, it's completely back to normal, and that's how things are supposed to be. Diabetics have a slightly different issue, and there's getting to be so many of them that we almost have to start talking about them all the time. But really, it only applies to diabetics. And what happens with diabetics is there's 2 kinds of diabetics. There's type 2 diabetics, which is called insulin resistant. And in 1959, in the Journal of the American Medical Association, an article came out explaining insulin resistance and stating quite clearly that it's due to a high-fat diet. And if you reduce the fat in your diet, you get rid of insulin resistance. So I talk about this in 80-10-10. which I really shouldn't. This is 1959. I'm not sure if 64 years ago counts as news, but apparently not everybody knows it yet. But certainly there's a lovely YouTube video that's, I don't know, 10, 15 years old already, called How to Become a Diabetic in 6 Hours, where the medical doctor goes through that 1959 work and explains it yet again, but with more visuals this time instead of just an article in a magazine. And he shows you how you become a diabetic, and he tests his blood sugar after eating some fat and explaining that it's the fat, not the sugar, that blocks the sugar from getting out of the bloodstream. So for all type 2 diabetics, we can have you completely off all insulin, usually in 48 hours. I'll be reserved and say 72 hours, and you never take insulin again. But for a type 1 diabetic that doesn't make any insulin at all, and those people exist, we can't make that claim. That does not happen. You must have insulin. And what we typically see is an improvement in what is called insulin sensitivity, how many grams of carbohydrate per unit of insulin. So you're a healthy guy, your insulin sensitivity is probably somewhere around 100. But for a type 1 diabetic that's not doing well, their insulin sensitivity might be 1 or 2. Huge difference. So they eat a gram of insulin. They eat a gram of glucose. They need a unit of insulin. You eat 100 grams of glucose and you need 1 unit of insulin, and your body produces it. So it's no problem. It's not much need, but they produce none. And what we see for them is a 75% reduction. Predictable 75% reduction in insulin use per gram of carbohydrate consumed. So if they were using 100 units, they'll knock it down to 25. Big difference, because the more units of insulin you use, the bigger the swings tend to get. The highs get higher, the lows get lower. The more time you're out of control, the faster you're getting these life-threatening or limb-threatening infections, the quicker you're going to end up going blind. You get organ shutdowns with those super high blood sugars. So it's very important for a diabetic to use as little insulin as possible. Okay, so they got special notice.
It's crazy to hear what you're saying, because,
yep,
with just a dietary change, with the diabetes epidemic that's going on right now, and especially with young children, it's mind-boggling to me that so many people would rather go through the daily rigmarole of their medications and their insulins and all that stuff than take 30 or 60 days, or maybe do a fast to reset all of this and live the healthiest version of themselves.
I was recently contacted by a woman whose 14-year-old daughter was diagnosed as a diabetic, type 1 diabetic, in November of last year. I started working with her about 10 weeks ago. She hasn't had any insulin in the last 6 weeks. She was using 18 units a day when I first met her. And we took weeks to knock that down, bit by bit by bit, until eventually she hit 0 and hasn't used any insulin now for more than a month. The doctors made it very clear to the mother and the daughter that she'd be on insulin for the rest of her life. The mom recently asked the doctors, she said, well, what would happen if my daughter changed her lifestyle in such a way that she just didn't need insulin? And they made it very clear. They said that does not happen. Nobody gets off insulin. So once you're on for life, which is great business model, but it's not really good for the patient. I asked her if she'd like to go back to using insulin, and she said, absolutely not. I asked her if she likes the food on 80-10-10. She goes, I love eating all this juicy fruit and all this wonderful food. I love fruits. I love vegetables. They digest well. I've become more athletic. All of a sudden I have energy that I haven't had for years. I didn't realize it was diabetes coming on. Had no energy. Can you imagine being 8, 10, 12 years old and not having energy to do any sports at all? Because she was just always tired. And now she's doing sports every day and just loving it. It's kind of cool. I like helping people. I'm really passionate about helping people. So the 80-10-10 course is perfect for me.
Real quick, I know you don't want to go too far into it because it gets into clinical stuff and you got to be careful. But how do you reverse a lot of people with type 1? Do you get them off insulin a lot, or is it very different from case to case?
You have to understand what type 1 is. Right now, there's only type 1 and type 2. Type 2, you make enough insulin, but you suffer from insulin resistance, meaning you eat too much fat. And so the insulin can't do its job. Type 1, you either don't produce insulin at all, and those people are going to be on insulin forever.
So do you think that girl was a false diagnosis?
No, because type 1 has an in-between state. So type 1 is you don't produce insulin at all, or all the way up to 99% of what you need. You produce insulin, but not enough to do the job, and so you experience diabetes. This young lady, from everything I could tell and from the history I took, was still making insulin on her own. And by improving her digestive function, by improving her diet, by helping rebuild adrenal function, which drives the pancreas to produce insulin, by reducing the ultra heavy load on the pancreas to produce insulin, because as she improved her diet, she didn't need anywhere near so much. All of these factors combined to essentially put her over the threshold where she didn't need to produce insulin, didn't need to inject insulin, because she's manufacturing enough on her own. Maybe if she was on a standard Western diet, she would still be diabetic because she doesn't produce that much as the standard Western diet requires. But 80-10-10 requires very little insulin, and she produces more than enough.
Thank you.
But no, I've worked with a lot of type 1 diabetics over the years, and every single time what we end up with is a 75% reduction in requirement for insulin, as we see their insulin sensitivity go up from 1 or 2 to somewheres around 75. But typically, because they're not making any insulin at all, they still need to take some.
Do you see that across the board, like from a young teenager to, adults and people in their 40s and 50s with type 1? Or is it something that when you catch it early enough, like with this young lady at 14, that, no? No,
it depends on, it really depends, as Jim said, it's an individual case-by-case basis. But if they've had what's classically referred to as a metabolic crash, and at 10, 12, 14, 16 years old, they crash and become a diabetic, and maybe they go into adrenal fatigue or chronic fatigue, or they have any of a variety of other symptoms that will sometimes associate with that. One of them being diabetes, right? Their pancreas just shuts down. If they're not manufacturing insulin, it's up to the individual. There's other people who become type 1 after having been type 2, right? So because the type 2 diabetic on a standard Western diet is still asking to become a type 1. I mean, they're looking to overwork their adrenals. They're looking to overwork their pancreas. It can't go on that way, and eventually fatigue ensues, just like it does for your muscles. It's no different. If you overuse your muscles again and again and again, they fatigue and eventually fail. And if you do the same thing to any organ, it will fatigue and fail.
Wow, I didn't know any of
Powerful
that.
stuff.
The funny thing is, health is really simple, and I
Yeah.
pinch myself that I'm telling people eat fruits and vegetables, get enough sleep, be active. Like this is kind of simple. So obviously, I'm working with the fine tuning of all that. My passion is working with athletes. I love doing that most of all, but only because they're willing to throw themselves in as enthusiastically as I'm willing to throw myself into their challenges. Uh, it's what I went to school for. My undergraduate degree was physical education. I love working with the mechanical challenge of how to be more effective in your movements, how to make training efficient and effective. So I end up, somehow, fortunately, because I've never advertised in my life, somehow, fortunately, athletes find me. People looking to improve their health find me, and I count my blessings really in that regard. I'm kind of what they call the old time doctor. We don't chase ambulances. We don't put out ads in the paper. We just people come to the doctor. And I've just stuck with that, and it's worked. So I'm not really changing it.
Well, as a athlete, a runner, ultramarathoner, I really appreciate it, and it warms my heart to hear all the stuff that you're talking about. I'm also a physical education teacher, so I try to empower the students and to encourage them to take ownership not only in their physical education and their movement practices, but also to see the light of day that what they put in their body has such a huge impact not only on their performance but their performance in the classroom, their brain function,
Of course,
all that
of
stuff.
course.
So
And if they ate better, they'd feel better, they'd perform better, they'd be smarter, or at least less dumbed down. They'd be unleashed until, as far as fitness activities. It's just like being unleashed, let loose. I find that quite fascinating, and I don't know. For me, it's fun to watch people improve themselves. I started teaching at a very early age. I had an opportunity to start teaching at 13, teaching sports at 13, and I've been teaching ever since. And there's a certain thrill in watching somebody learn something. I just think learning is fun. So there's a thrill when people learn a physical thing that they didn't even know they could do or are pretty sure they can't do. And then if you coach them just right, you bring it out of them. I love bringing out the best in people.
You said health and nutrition is simple, and you pinch yourself because you get to help people with this stuff. And I want to thank you for making it simple, because a lot of the raw plant-based stuff has always kind of drawn me to it. But there's been so many rules around it. Can't eat this with that. Can't eat this. It's always kind of I got to it, and a lot of the dogma just weighed me down with things. You make things simple. Eat to your full. Eat fruit. Eat good fruit that you like, and don't if you don't feel good, don't eat it. So I want to thank you.
Hey man, if Richard and I were out taking a long walk, we said, let's go walk today. Eventually we'd find ourselves under a tree with fruit in it. Are we going to go look for something else? No, we're going to eat mangoes or peaches or whatever it is, figs, until we're full. You're going to eat one food at a time when you're hungry till you're full. That's what every creature in nature does, except sometimes they run out of food, so they have to go look again. But if you're under a peach tree, you're going to be eating peaches. You're not going to be looking for something else. This is just common sense. But thank you. I really do try to simplify things. It took a lot of education to overcome my education.
ain't that the truth?
But I think the kicker there, and what you were kind of touching on, Jim, is that in every specialty area, people become a little protective of their specialty area. They don't really want you learning how to be an airplane pilot or learning how to take their job away from them. They get threatened really quickly. And in the world of nutrition, the nutritionists overcomplicated it. And they started teaching the original nutrition, when nutrition was in its earliest stages, was taught exactly correctly what they did was they looked at the diet that existed in the moment and then examined the nutrients in that food, and the healthy people eating whatever diet they were on, they said, this is the nutrient component of their food. That's what would make for healthy nutrition. The problem was this was being done with the standard German diet of the 1920s or 30s, and then eventually the standard Western diet, the standard American diet of the 70s. And people are going, this is what nutrition should be. So the standards were set based on an incorrect assessment of diet. But then they said, you know what? We don't want everybody to really understand this, because then they could do it on their own. There'd be no profession. And so instead of teaching nutrition based on the food you eat, basically tell me the food you eat. I can tell you what road you're on. Are you on a road to health? Are you on a road to diabetes? Are you on a road to cancer? Are you on a road to heart disease? Just tell me your diet. We know what road you're on. And instead of just looking at the food, they started teaching nutrition based on the nutrients. Well, we're talking about current estimates are 400,000 to 500,000 nutrients. There's nobody can juggle 400,000 or 500,000 nutrients. No nutritionist can do that. They can't. No nutritionist could juggle 1,000 nutrients. I mean, that's just way too complicated. The body does it automatically. It's a symphony. But to try to juggle it from the outside and say, you don't have enough omega-3, you need to eat more omega-3, when really the problem was you had too much omega-6 and what you needed was less omega-6, not more omega-3. And all of a sudden, nobody even knows what it is. And omegas, for those people who want to know, omega's just fat. So where a great pickup line in the bar might be, where do you get your omegas? It would be a terrible pickup line to go up to a girl and say, where do you get your fat? So we guise it as omegas. And it's just, to me, it's a shame, because you can't make nutrition work if you're trying to do nutrition by the nutrients. And nutrition by food is really easy. Eat fruits and vegetables, done with the science of nutrition. I don't know, it's not really complicated. Okay, it can be when you're trying to sort out a ball of knots that people have gotten themselves into such a mess, and you're trying to sort out individual health problems. Okay, that's my job. But for most people, starting, from a reasonably healthy vantage point, all you got to do is eat more fruit, and good things will happen.
Amen. Amen. Well put. Dr. Graham, thank you for your time and your knowledge today. We got 4 rapid-fire questions for you. First rapid-fire question is, are you a coffee drinker?
No.
No. Have you always not been a coffee drinker?
I've tasted coffee a couple times.
Okay. Do you do any caffeine or no?
No. I get enough sleep so that caffeine seems stupid.
Okay. Touche.
Dr. Graham, do you have any daily practices or rituals that you do on a regular basis to show up as the strongest version of yourself?
I give gratitude every single day. I look myself in the mirror every single day in an effort to ask myself, am I getting rid of the contradictions between what I know and who I am and how I live my life? I do that every day. Get rid of if I find a contradiction, I need to be working on it, because I don't need to be that person that's not congruent. I don't do there's a lot of things I don't do that I know people use as their little individual practices, and I'm not knocking any of those. I tackle the hardest tasks first, always, and I make sure to stay fit every day.
Right.
What does that look like for you?
It's changed over the years. I kind of did things backwards. Or certainly not the way most people do it. I was a trampolinist, a professional trampolinist in my youth. You could ask me, how was it being a professional trampolinist?
How was it?
It had its ups and downs.
I'll be here all week.
No, but when I got hurt and my career ended with a knee injury, and I switched over to cardio, cycling to rebuild my knee, and then eventually running because it was just so much fun. Because I had changed my diet, I never could run as a kid. I was a heavy milk drinker, and I never had the wind to be able to run. But when I went raw vegan, all of a sudden I could just go run as far as I want. I was fit enough. Now I could breathe. And so for 30 years I was a cardio athlete, did triathlons, ultras, marathons, century rides, 10K, 5K, it just didn't matter. I wanted to be fit enough to be able to do any sport with anybody at any time and not be embarrassed. So I was never really good at anything, but I could do anything. And finally, after about 30 years of cardio, daily cardio, I realized that my job had changed. And I was spending more time sitting down, and I was spending more time at the computer, and life was becoming very sedentary, and I didn't like it at all. And what was going away was not my cardio ability. What was going away was my strength. And so I started strength training, very, very ultra specific strength training. And like you, I have my degree in phys ed, and I understood what was going on, and I learned how to improve my strength without gaining an ounce of weight. I weigh what I weighed 12 years ago when I started strength training, but I've doubled my deadlift and doubled my squat, and that has served me well. So I still have reasonably functional legs. I can go ice skate quite comfortably. I'm 70 and I'm still feeling great. I qualified. I'm hoping to take first in the nation next year at my age group powerlifting championships. We'll see, but that's my hope, is to take first. And so now I like the challenge of strength training because it's so precision. It's just so precision to work on a 1 rep max. But I like the results that it gives me. I still get on my bicycle and go for a ride. I walk the dogs and run with them every day. But that's no longer primarily I'm doing strength training at this point. But one of the things I've always been good at was neurologically oriented things, whether that was juggling or balance or agility or whatever. So I still do a lot of that because I'm not really wanting any of that to go away. I'm kind of like I'm clawing my way now, not wanting to lose any abilities any faster than I have to.
Yeah.
Dr. Graham, what are you listening to right now? Music, podcasts, audiobooks? Are you reading anything?
Yeah, sure. I spend a fair bit of time, whenever possible, with the people who have what I want, the people I look up to, whoever they might be, for any reason that might be, from Benjamin Franklin and Abraham Lincoln for certain things, to Mark Hansen or any number of leaders. Terry Orlick, I really like Terry Orlick's outlook on excellence. He was a coach of mine when I was 12 years old, but then we lost touch, and it's great to reconnect with him and go through his materials. There's a lot of sports psychology that I look at on excellence because that nothing else is acceptable to me. I love a good mystery, though. and I'll listen to Audible books that are mysteries. I really openly admit I like mysteries, and I went through a phase for about a decade of just insatiable science fiction, until I think I'd read, and now there's really like, I'm spending more time writing than I am listening, because I've got a lot of writing to do. So I'm working on creating a new program right now that'll be offering for the month of January in Nicaragua. It's 45. Well, it's five presentations per day for 28 days. So whatever that is, 140 presentations that I'll be giving during the month of January, and I'm just putting that together at the moment so that I can announce it to the world, for people who want to get out of the cold for the month of, go live in 80-10-10 heaven for a month.
Do you read any fiction yourself?
I wrote one book of fiction. Yeah, I wrote one book of fiction,
Okay.
called A Walk in the Jungle, and it's actually about hygiene, but it's definitely, it's science hygiene. So it's not sci-fi, it's sci-hi.
I like it.
Nice. I like it. Dr. Graham, last one for you. Do you have a guilty pleasure or pleasures?
Do you have an example?
I mean, like,
What's yours?
Katy Perry.
No, I'm honestly going to say no.
that's
no.
what I thought.
I don't find, okay, I went to college in the 70s. Those were some wild times. I will admit that although I was very focused on health and physical education, I did occasionally get distracted in the 70s. But ever since, what I want is I want to improve and increase my awareness. I want to improve myself. I want to improve myself somehow every single day. I'm taking a lot of coursework right now. I'm learning more about how to use computers to my advantage. I'm taking courses for that. I'm taking a course in Spanish. I'm attempting to learn. I love learning, and I love that I still can learn. I mean, that's so cool. And so, but I've thought about, a lot of people say, like, what do you cheat with, or what's your guilty pleasure? And really, who am I cheating? No, I don't want to cheat myself. I want to treat myself well. I want to continue to thrive. I want to nourish myself. I want to give myself adult-sized portions of nurturing, and so for me, training hard. No, like I think sometimes I let myself get too little sleep and do too much work. Maybe that might be it. Because I do get caught up sometimes, just wanting to do more and not sleeping as much as I could. But I really feel like I sleep as much as I want. No, I've always thought about those things and said, like, who would I be cheating exactly? And why would I cheat myself? So no, certainly for anybody who feels that food that's off the program, as it were, whatever the program might be for them, but anybody who feels that food that's off the program is a treat, they're not really ready to be on the program they're trying to be on. And they're going to find themselves going back to those treats. I don't look at cooked food as a treat. It's just simply not for me. The cooked food lost its appeal a long, long time ago. And I'll tell you how that happened. in 1983, a friend of mine who owned 4 Cadillacs went away on a 2-month vacation. I owned a car that I was in school, and it could only be called a beater. I'm not going to give it even a model, right? It was just, it was worth about $10. So, and he took his 4 Cadillac cars and gave them to 4 of his friends and said, could you drive these around for 2 months? Because I don't want them sitting in my driveway, and I don't want them not driven for 2 whole months. And he gave one to me and said, take care of it. So I did. And I drove that Cadillac Brougham for 2 months. And not one time during that entire 2 months did I ever crave my old beater car. Point being, when you find something better than what you have, whether that's a new girlfriend or a new food or a new training style or a new coach or a new whatever, you don't crave the old one at all. Because you go with the new. I mean, when was the last time you got up to change the channels? You miss that, getting up to change the channels? No, nobody misses that. Ding or ding. So it's just how it is. No, I replaced what I used to do by choice with something far better. And I don't crave the old stuff. Nope, no guilty pleasure. Sorry.
Well put.
I love it. Yeah, well said, well put, motivating, inspiring, and
oh, bless your heart.
It's
very kind. You guys are super. You guys are super.
Thank you. It's a very powerful conversation. We're grateful for your time and your information, and I look forward to digging deeper into some of your works and giving more serious effort to a full-on 80-10-10 type of lifestyle.
Thank you very much. If I can ever help you with your running, I'd love to do it. Show you how to run.
Absolutely.
I feel pretty confident I could show you how to run faster. It's more fun when you go faster.
You got a good one here, Doc. You got a good one to work with. So
it's more fun when you go faster.
It sure is.
Yeah, I know.
It's
really more rewarding all the way around. And that's the thing. I'm assuming you guys will post a website or something. And
yep.
Beyond that, like I said, I'm not going to advertise it. I don't need to be promoting. I need to be educating. That's where my passion lies. I appreciate you, letting me know. We'll announce your podcast. I'll put my social media people on it. I don't play social media, but I got people who do.
Good for you.
I just don't want to go there. It's a black hole for me.
Yeah.
That I don't understand. So I'm not. So I just don't play. And that's
Good.
okay. I don't feel like I'm missing anything. Well, I hope our paths cross again. If I can ever do anything for you, be happy to talk with you anytime and look forward to when we meet.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, sir. Keep spreading your message. You're changing the world. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Thank you for doing your part.
Thank you. Take care. Have a great night.